So for those of you that follow Ardelyx, you've probably noticed the 30% drop on Monday in the share price. So in this video, I'm going to be talking about the release that Ardelyx made, as well as the presentation that they gave. I'm also going to be talking about the analyst updates that were made. And finally, I'm going to be taking a look at the share price and giving my thoughts on what I think's actually happened with the share price. So I'm going to start in Ticker because I need to update the points here. We can see already that the bear points, the ESRD PPS, was my second highest concern about this company, and I think we can now see the validity in that. And if I go in, I can see here that I've added the Dapper as a ball point. So you can see that it's now grayed out. I've now removed that as a ball point. Obviously that is no longer in existence. And if I click in here, I can see the bare point I've made to that is that the application's not now be made. I've linked to some proof here. This is the SEC filing. We can go in and take a look at the SEC filing. And it's saying in an effort to preserve patient access, the company has chosen not to apply for the Dapper. So fairly vanilla statement there from the company, but they have been talking more in their presentation, and it was quite interesting. You can find this presentation on their website, but the CEO, Mike Rabb, he was quite avoidant on exactly why they've not decided to go in. And this is a bit of a concern for me. This came up in the questions and answers. They had to ask, the analysts had to ask 3 times at least. I think it was 3 or 4 times. And he still just avoided the answer. He was just, they were asking exactly what it was in the new CMS update that Mike Rabb didn't like, and he just kept on saying that they'd seen data before from other drugs and that these drugs had entered into the program and they'd not got the sales that they were expecting to get, and he didn't want that to happen to exposure, which sounds reasonable enough. But the analysts were asking, you know, you had this data before, you knew about these drugs, what was it in the CMS update that made you change your mind? Now, one analyst in particular was talking about the updates to the price every year. And Mike Rabb did admit that this was an issue. So basically they had classed the oral medications the same as generics, so that they would only be applicable for, I think, something ridiculous like a 40-cent increase in the price. Now, of course, this is not something that they would want to agree to, but in a sense this feels like it would be pushing the baby out of the pram with the toys, unless there's something going on. But Mike Rabb, being very unclear about exactly what it was, did raise my suspicions. But my perspective on this is that, from what I could tell from the law being passed, is a lot of this is about lobbying, and it looks like a lot of it is about finance and being paid, and perhaps this is something that they don't want to talk about, and I'm hoping that he's just so confident that the bill is going to be passed. The bill here mentioned, it's the HR 5074. If this bill passes, then they can carry on to sell as they have been selling. But I'm hoping one of the reasons that they haven't gone forward with the Dapper is because they are so confident that this is going to get passed now, and maybe he doesn't want to really be talking about why he has that confidence level. Of course, this is all speculation, but it does seem odd to me in that presentation that he didn't want to mention exactly why it is they didn't go forward with the CMS after the recent update. And also, on a quick note as well, I just wanted to point out, I think this is one of the strong reasons Ticker could be a really good tool for investing, because it just has a permanent record here of all the good and bad points for a company, which you can change as it's updated, and you can go back and see the evidence for why you put that information into the system in the first place. So please do come and check it out. Okay, so let's look at some of the analysts' updates, and I'm going to start with the most pessimistic of the lot, which is the Piper Sandler. The reason this is pessimistic is not only did they lower it from overweight to neutral, but they also dropped the price target from $15 to $7, which to me seems like a massive over exaggeration. That's less than 50% of the stock price, which kind of suggests to me that they think that exposure is now dead in the water, and to be honest, I haven't seen any evidence of that yet. But they have mentioned here that they think this is that essentially the CMS is now signaling its intent to severely restrict access to exposure, and Ardelyx is gearing up for a major fight in this regard. Now, I do think at the end of the day this is quite subjective, but I do agree that it's an amount of signalling here, and that is what Mike Rabb signalled to in his presentation. However, he also said that the bill is progressing well and that they have a team with a proven track record of winning these battles. And I think that's always been the case with this company, and I don't think that's changed from this point. So I think it was always going to be a problem with the ESRD PPS, and Ardelyx is just continuing to fight that fight in the best way that it can. However, to indicate that exposure is now dead in the water, I think is going just a bit too far. Okay, so that brings me to my second slide, which is for Cantor Fitzgerald. They don't have a price target, but they have decided to keep their rating at overweight. And they mentioned a few things. They brought up the same thing here that I brought up, which is that they have been fighting this fight for a while here and nothing has changed. And also that they think the company is already undervalued for Ibisrela alone. Another really important point that they bring up here is that exposure patients have 45% who are commercially private coverage and 55% covered by Medicare, which means that exposure still has half the market that they can sell to. The next analyst update I wanted to go over quickly was the TD Cowen update. They decided to maintain their buy rating, and also they kept a steady price target of $12. They believe that the company made a cautious step, and though it may have come as a surprise to some investors, they think that the advantages of staying in Dapper were initially overestimated anyway. They also feel optimistic that the future legislation to postpone the inclusion of exposure in the dialysis bundle is going well, and that they suggest that the decline in the share price was an overreaction. Okay, so finally I want to talk about what's happened with the stock price. And you can see here on the Tuesday such a massive drop there, over a 30% drop, and that just seems like a massive overreaction. You could argue that exposure and Ibisrela have a similar amount of market opportunity. With exposure now with half the market, you should expect a 25% drop. But I think a lot of that risk was already priced into the stock. So a 30% drop is a massive overreaction. But then if you go back over a week, you can see that the stock price was sitting at $6 and we had a massive increase in here just before the drop, which seems a bit suspicious. And you do get people talking about how this could be market manipulations or other theories like this. But I think what's probably more likely was that people were buying the stock in anticipation of the CMS releasing this news and Ardelyx releasing a press release saying that, hey, we've now applied for Dapper, and that people would buy more of the stock. That to me seems like a more logical explanation. And then of course when they didn't apply for Dapper, perhaps those people sold or different people sold, and that's why we saw the massive drop in the share price. But if you look at how much the stock price has fallen since a week ago till now, it's only probably fallen about 10-15%, which I don't think is a massive overreaction actually. I think that's quite a fair reaction. Obviously the update that Ardelyx isn't going into the Dapper program isn't good news. So I would expect the stock price to fall, and I do think it's fallen a fair amount. However, I do think that the stock price has been undervalued for quite some time now, and I do think that the combined market opportunity now for both drugs is around the $2 billion mark. Okay, that does actually lead me to want to update Tick-Taco here, because I was talking about the great potential for exposure here, and you can see here that I was talking about the amount of patients that would be available. I'm going to now have to add a bare point saying only 45% available through private coverage. Cantor Fitzgerald mentioned this in their analyst update, and then I'm just going to take the proof, add that in, okay, and then I'll add that to the sorted list. Okay, so now I have some concrete evidence, so I'll be able to find that again in the future. Okay, so that's my thoughts on the big drop on Tuesday. If you have any of your own that you would like to share or any new information that you would like to provide, please let me know and I'll either include that in Tick-Taco or one of my upcoming videos. Cool. Thanks very much. Have a good day.